is back, baby. What up, everyone? Antoine Fantoine here, internet's busiest music nerd. Hope you're doing well. This is another episode of the Needle Drop Podcast, and in this episode we are having a conversation with Adam of YourMovieSucks.org. We talk movies, music, criticism, reviews, YouTube channels. We talk about a lot of stuff. So, yeah. You know, if you're a fan of Adam's content, which you should be at this point, of course, his shit is linked down there below in the description box. You will enjoy this conversation very much. Now that's out of the way. If you want to support this podcast, there are a couple ways to do so. You could do what you're doing right now. Watch it on YouTube, share, like, comment, subscribe. Okay, watch all of our podcast episodes. Another thing you can do is down there in the description box, you can hit up our Amazon Associates link. Anything you buy on Amazon, if you live in the US, we get kickback from it. Does not add to your overall price. You can also subscribe to this podcast for a small monthly fee and get this episode and all new episodes sent to your email inbox. Okay, that is linked down there in the description box on our support page. And then you can subscribe to backlogged episodes of this podcast on iTunes. And yeah. That's it, guys. That's how you can support this podcast. This podcast is the best, interviewing a lot of cool people on the internet, and I hope you enjoy this one. Let's go into the episode. Buh! Hi everyone, Anthony Fantano here, you know who it is, and it is time for another episode of the Needle Drop Podcast, where we interview artists and content creators from across the internet. And in this episode, a very special conversation with Adam, infamous YouTuber and YouTube movie reviewer of the YouTube channel and the website, YourMovieSucks.org.
Woo! That's me.
Woo! Yes.
I made it.
You made it, dude.
It's real now.
You made it. Onto the Needle Drop YouTube channel. Yeah, this is just one small step. You're on your way.
This
dude.
is a stepping stone.
In this episode, we're going to be talking about not only the history of his channel and his review style, but I think we'll be able to get into a larger conversation about reviews and reviewing in the modern age. You know, since we're both kind of like reviewer guys, we both kind of do that.
Exactly.
Sort of semi-regularly. It's just a hobby for me.
Same industry.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah.
YouTube reviewers.
Yeah. All right, dude. How you doing? Thanks for coming on.
I'm doing great. Yeah, I'm excited to talk and shoot the shit.
Okay. Well, let's start off with just how your channel began. You know, your history as a YouTuber. What exactly got you started making videos, and you know, was it movie reviews from the start?
So my first YouTube channel was created June 20th of 2006. So I'm coming up to 10 years on YouTube. I was like 15 years old, and I discovered YouTube, and I was using it as a place to upload my really crappy like junior high school home video things that I made with my friends. And then beyond that point, I started having I had a vlog channel, and YouTube was just this small community of vloggers all interacting with each other, and like,
are we still talking like are we still
sorry?
talking like mid and late 2000s here?
We're talking about like 2007 or through 9,
now,
I guess.
I used to go on YouTube around that time a lot too, and you could probably confirm this, you know, though there's not like a lot of written history about this time in YouTube, but as you probably remember at this point, the top 100 YouTubers, that community, very small. And there were a lot of people who were sort of at the top of that community because they would sort of just make all these sock accounts and just subscribe to themselves
it was
on
very
YouTube.
easy to cheat the system.
Super easy because it was just such a small community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's crazy too, because I've gone back and looked up these channels that I knew were in the top 100 way back when. And now I look at them and I'm like, wait a minute, they've only got like 35,000 subscribers or something. And it's just like this absolute mind fuck. I don't know. It always seemed so much bigger back then, but I guess nobody was using the website. I remember when YouTube used to like feature people too. That was weird.
Yes. Oh my God. Yes. It's interesting that you talk about sort of, coming from and being very familiar with that era of YouTube, because I still kind of get a strong vibe of that from your videos now, that you sort of appreciate that YouTube is this internet medium, and there's kind of like a DIY characteristic to it that makes it so appealing. Whereas, there are some people who I think have missed the point. Maybe we've missed the point because we don't have like because we don't have like 10 million subscribers. Maybe we're missing the point. We don't have the diamond play button. But there are some people who not yet. There are some people who've gotten on YouTube just to kind of make TV,
Yeah.
Whereas
exactly.
To me, that's not the point of YouTube.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. There was Adam Kovic mentioned this in his Funhouse podcast, that he appreciated my channel for being something that you couldn't just get from TV. And I think it is important that YouTube is not just a platform for new art, but it's encouraging different kinds of art in a way. Like now it's a lot of being a remix culture, which I really like. This sort of meta building upon other people's works and reviewing even other YouTube channels, which is kind of funny.
Well, what's kind of funny about that is that I feel like the video formats that we're seeing right now on YouTube, where people are essentially critiquing other videos and incorporating other people's videos into their own and sort of commenting on whatever's happening or being said, that all in a way almost could have been avoided if YouTube had maintained, cleaned up, and made more efficient the whole response system. Because you probably remember, back in the day, people used to be able to respond to other people's videos, and you could see 10 or 15 other responses to other people's videos. I have no idea
why they got rid of it, because apparently nobody used it, but I used it all the time.
Oh, people! I thought people used it.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't know really why they got rid of it.
I think it's not that people didn't use it. I think it's that people kind of abused it, because people would just respond to any video that was popular with a video that didn't even have any relevance to the video.
Reply Girls, Psychic Pebbles made a video on that.
Yeah, so there was like it was definitely abused, but the thing is, I think that kind of created a good community of conversation outside of sort of whatever the most mainstream or popular YouTube videos were, But yeah, it's sort of funny that people kind of found a way around that by just kind of embracing this whole reaction format.
Yeah, in a way. I don't know. I feel like it was kind of cool to have responses to videos underneath the other videos, so you can see like, oh, here's all these responses to this. Because now it's like you can still do the same thing, I guess, by YouTube's search function, but you're only going to really find the most popular people that responded. I felt like it was easier to kind of connect and find the smaller things back in the day, and now it's just like all these recommended for you channels that aren't really recommended for you, but they're like super big and popular already. I don't know. Yeah,
it's all about algorithms now and kind of pushing videos to you that
they're still trying to make a profit, right?
Yeah, exactly. And pushing videos to you that they know are popular and that they know, some high quality premium advertising is running on. They're not trying to push obscure channels to you that aren't partnered, which I don't even know if people aren't partnered anymore. I've heard that there are people who very early on, when signing on to YouTube, you're kind of already signing on to be partnered with them, just in case some video just in case some video that you have like goes viral or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Because whenever that happens and a channel isn't partnered, YouTube's there sweating, thinking the revenue.
Yeah.
We're losing the revenue.
Yeah, I don't even know if they're profitable yet.
Who, YouTube?
Yeah,
they've got to be.
I last time I heard, and I would like to actually find a source for this before I'd start spouting bullshit accidentally. But last time I heard, Google was running YouTube at a loss, and that would explain why there's no legitimate competitors at all. Because try to imagine exactly how much infrastructure and memory and processing power, et cetera, you would need to run a website like this. Like how many how many days worth of video is being uploaded every second on YouTube at this point, right?
Sure.
It's got to be massive.
Well, it's kind of interesting to see that, I mean, you have YouTube, which, you know, you're telling me is running at a loss, but you have people who are on the website who are successfully making videos that are very popular, who are effectively millionaires.
Oh yeah.
You know, so I mean, it would be the first instance. I don't know if any company in history has ever run that way.
Well, I mean,
where you know
right
its employees kind of effectively, its freelance employees are making millions while the company itself is just like, you know, hemorrhaging money.
Well, that's them being run by Google, right? And like
Sure.
I said, I mean, like I would still like to fact check this just to make sure we're not that I'm not spouting any bullshit accidentally. But
well, you know, let's also take into account
towards YouTube Red, which is going to be a lot more profitable for them.
Yeah. Well, you know,
I think it's just a better service anyway.
I was just also going to say, before we get into the YouTube Red thing, you know, let's also not forget the fact that YouTube and Google collectively spend a whole lot of money on not only the promotion of the website, but all sorts of weird tie-ins with celebrities. And, you know, they just recently opened these YouTube Spaces, which are very large, very expensive, very huge venues where any YouTuber with a channel of a certain size can go in and make use of all of these different, shooting rooms and sets and, you know, some like really high quality equipment. You know, it seems like they invest a whole lot of money into the site trying to push creators that they think are doing something. But I don't know if YouTube's really effectively kind of made someone popular on YouTube yet, or if it's just kind of continually happened organically again and again and again, sort of in a viral fashion.
Well, I mean, they, like we were talking about, they did used to feature videos way back in the day before Google bought them. But
sure,
even back then you could artificially make something trend that, you know, you're literally just putting it on the front page and then people will see it and be like, oh, okay, I'm going to check out this person's channel. And then even if they don't have decent content, they'll still get a decent amount of views and subscribers. However, I mean, I feel like it has to happen organically, because as much as you can push something into the public's eye, they have to decide to keep coming back. So like one of the very few original like top YouTubers back in the day that is still in the top YouTube channels today is Smosh. And that's because they have their own, you know, they appeal to a certain demographic that just keeps getting renewed and renewed. And they were able to capitalize on that. Like, yes, they did have a gigantic head start. Would they be famous today if they didn't, if they weren't in the top 100 back in the day? I don't know. I don't know. But they were able to take advantage of that for sure.
I haven't kept up on their content. Like, what kind of content are they making now? Because what's kind of
really
interesting is that back
content.
Really bad. I mean, are they still kind of making the same content they made back in the day? Because they came up during a time when the most popular thing you could be doing on YouTube was fucking sketch comedy. Everybody was doing sketch comedy.
Yeah.
If you weren't putting sketch comedy up on your channel, you weren't going to go anywhere. But nowadays, it's like, if you're not doing reactions to things, then you might as well just not be on YouTube. Or if you're not like starting a gaming channel or something.
Well, right. What's unfortunate about it is, well, so Smosh is pretty much doing the same thing, but they also have a gaming channel, and I'm pretty sure they also have a reaction channel, et cetera, et cetera. Unfortunately, just because of YouTube's algorithm itself and the way that advertising revenue works at all, is it's really encouraged, whether it wanted to or not, it's encouraged people to make really fast, short videos that you can pump out really, really quickly. You know, it doesn't really favor the type of content that you would actually have to, you know, spend weeks filming or something like that. You're not going to make much ad money off of one of those videos. And so just by that alone, by their system inadvertently or unintentionally encouraging it, that's why we're seeing a lot more of that content. It's really, you can pump out reaction videos really, really quickly. You can pump out gaming channel videos really, really quickly, depending on, you know, whether or not there's any significant editing going into it or not. You know, so that's why we're seeing all of this content, is because the algorithm itself encourages it. It's like an inevitability.
Yeah, and even if you're making these types of videos and they're not like so viral that you're making millions of views, let's just say several 100,000 views, your profit margin off those videos are going to be much larger because what you're investing into them isn't as much, because you're not, doing all this crazy production value or anything like that. We're talking like webcams, images on the screen, and, using content from somewhere else to sort of comment on it and react to it. Which again is sort of another way that YouTube kind of, I guess, keeps at least some people doing things DIY, because if the amount of money that people are getting returned to them for doing these videos was so great, I don't know, probably everybody would be building like some kind of Hollywood, I don't know, quality production out of their, home, or renting out some building or some ridiculous shit.
What's actually cool about that, though, is the people that do wind up doing these larger productions and actually, making short films and doing it well. Those people might not make much ad revenue, but they do get movie deals now. A lot of new directors that are being signed on to big Hollywood projects are now just literally being plucked off of YouTube.
Yeah, there's definitely way more crossover between traditional media and internet media now than there used to be like 5 years ago.
There has to be.
Well, yeah.
Otherwise, traditional media will die sooner.
Exactly. Not only is it out of necessity, but I think, there's also a newfound respect there that used to not be there at all.
Of course.
It was more like, despising people in internet media. And in a way, I think that animosity is still kind of there. I mean, I don't know.
It's definitely still there.
Yeah, it's still there, but like in the instance of, I don't know how you feel about this film, but that Netflix film, Beasts of No Nation, how, it didn't get an Oscar nod at all for like anything. And it's easily better than, a lot of the films that did get a nod that year.
That was probably because they did Netflix release, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly.
I actually saw that at Toronto Film Fest. So I actually got to see it in a theater, but yeah, I enjoyed it. It probably should have gotten an Oscar nod. It was very much an Oscar type movie, and it's not like all of the nominations that year were great, but yeah, I think that it was mostly just because of that whole Netflix thing.
Okay, so you're doing these vlogs and and you're running your YouTube channel in the mid and late 2000s. Did this go anywhere for you at the time? When exactly did you sort of make this transition over into movie reviews?
Well, I mean, so I was doing vlogs, and then I started up a music channel. So I actually make music. I haven't been promoting it that much on my channel recently because all of my recordings are like from 2010, and it doesn't really reflect my current style and abilities. But I was making music back then anyway. I still am now. I'm actually recording an album this summer.
I know you play guitar. Are you a multi-instrumentalist? Are you sort of recording and producing everything yourself?
I play piano, drums, guitar, and bass mostly. There are some other instruments that I can kind of pick up, but I'm mostly going to be outsourcing that for this album, just because I would rather have the sound of somebody who's been playing violin their whole lives than somebody who learned it like in the past couple years. But anyway, so I was doing music, and I guess all of my YouTube channels have just kind of more or less been a way that I could, find out a way to express myself. And I've always had an interest in movies. I was literally just like obsessed with movies. There was a video store that was close to my home when I was growing up, and they had a special deal. 7 VHS movies for 7 days for $7, and every single week I would pay $7 and grab 7 different VHS movies, and I would literally just watch. Like,
how many people would take them up on that deal?
Me, I don't know.
Well, it just seems like there'd be so many VHSs out at any given time.
I don't know. It was only like older release, right?
Yeah,
And
okay,
so
sure,
most
sure,
people
sure.
that show up at a video rental store are only looking for new releases anyway. And I
They're
guess that
looking
was
for
part
new
of that deal.
releases,
Is they
and
were
they're
like,
looking for like
yeah,
DVDs and stuff,
that's
probably.
exactly probably why they had that deal. Is like no one's renting these old 1980s or 90s movies, so we might as well be making a bit of money, right?
Sure,
Anyway,
exactly.
so I watched a crap ton of movies, and then after a while, I just got like decent, I guess, at recommending them for different friends. So like somebody would want something that's like super action packed and uncompromising and disturbing, and I'd be like, oh, there's this movie, blah 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 blah, and then after a while, I just kept hearing like, oh, you're really good at recommending movies just based on people's taste, not like, oh, this is a movie everybody should see or whatever, but
Sure.
based on people's taste. And then after a while, I was like, okay, well, I have a vlog channel, so why don't I talk about movies on it? And so on my vlog channel, you can actually see this like really shitty, just like face to the camera, me like pacing around my basement video that I did reviewing the movie Sunshine. And I was like, I think I was like 18 or 19 years old when I did that. And I don't know, I didn't illustrate my points very well. I was kind of awkward talking and didn't really, it wasn't really good. It was just more me trying it out.
Yeah.
And then I kind of just forgot about it after a while. And then Red Letter Media's Star Trek reviews, Plinkett reviews started making their way on the internet. And I watched those and I was like, holy crap, this is awesome. And something clicked where I was just like, oh, so there's this format that I could be doing instead of, talking to a camera, where I can use film clips, edit them together, put music over top, illustrate my points showing evidence, go frame by frame. If there's something wrong with it, I have proof to say it. And at the same time, kind of make an entertaining YouTube comedy video out of it. Before that point, I didn't realize that like such an option existed. I was just, it never even occurred to me. But after I saw Red Letter Media's Plinkett reviews, I was like, holy crap, why don't I try something like this? And the very first review on my channel is like literally just borderline ripoff of Plinkett's style. And even one of the first things I say in the video is like, this is definitely inspired by Red Letter Media. This is the format I'm using right now. Not gonna lie. And then slowly but surely, like every single video that I made after that point, just got further and further away from their style and more into my own. And I was kind of just able to find my own thing with it. And that's where I am today. That was in June 2010 when I created my film review channel.
So yeah, I mean, it's I had a similar experience myself with just the process of deciding I wanted to review with this thing, but then not knowing how to do it, and then pretty much the whole channel. Your first year of doing anything isn't really just you reviewing it as much as you teaching yourself how to do it.
Exactly. You gotta like find out what's you about it, and it's difficult to just jump in and already be your own unique thing and already be an expert at what you do. You gotta have this like self-teaching process,
do you still feel like you're learning at this point?
Oh, I'm always, one of my most recent reviews was like the Unfriended review, and the amount of like weird edits that I put into it, I'm like, it really depends on the project. There's always going to be something different that I can do with each movie, but I guess I'm always learning and improving myself. I've always kind of felt like the moment you stop learning or the moment you stop finding ways to improve, then you've just kind of peaked, So I'm always going to try and find ways to do things better. But
two questions based off of something that you had just said. First thing I want to talk about is your Unfriended review, a particular thing about it. Not just your reviewing style where you just sort of really go into just excruciating detail about every single thing about the movie that doesn't make sense, which is funny because I remember not too long ago, a friend of mine, I had seen the Straight Outta Compton movie, and which I thought was, a really terrible movie. And I
didn't even bother with it.
Oh, it was terrible. And I remember I had recorded this video of myself talking about it for like 20 minutes, just going over every single fucking thing that I thought was terrible about it. And then a friend of mine, like, you know, I think I passed it to a buddy of mine to edit it or just look at it or something. And he said, dude, you're talking about this for 20 minutes. Like, what the fuck are you doing? You know? And I don't know. It just kind of felt natural. There were just so many horrible things about the movie that I felt like needed to be brought up. Yeah. And then when I was watching your Unfriended review, and I was like, holy shit, like, this is like the exact same thing that I would want to do if I was reviewing this shitty ass movie. Like, I'd want to talk about every single little dumb thing that makes no sense about the movie, because I don't know, that's just kind of funny to me.
I know. I like to leave no stone unturned. There was a comment actually on that review that a lot of people were giving. It's that the date that they said the movie happened, like the day of the week, wasn't accurate. For like, oh, this date on the 13th wasn't a Thursday. Yeah. And that's where I was like, you know what? I mean, like, I probably could have found that on the IMDb Goofs page, but I wouldn't really want to. I think that what draws the line of what I would be willing to talk about is like how much do you actually have to go out of your way to find out that there is a mistake?
Well, I think it's funny just that it's not really that you've missed that one mistake, but it's like, you know, with your videos, you've kind of fostered this culture amongst the community of people that watch your videos, and there are people that look out for those sort of things, you know, and in a way I think your reviews kind of speak to that in a way that other reviews don't, where
probably,
you know, in a sensible way, you know, a lot of other reviewers try to keep it general because you just kind of automatically assume people don't want to watch a review that's almost as long as the movie. But your Unfriended review, you know, and I've watched all 3 parts, you know, very eagerly. You know, and each part is like 20 minutes each.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of funny, you know, to think about that. You know, also in light of that, you know, I have reviews that are like almost 20 minutes long of albums. You know, you're talking about this incredibly long form content in an age of internet media where it seems like the narrative that people kind of harp on over and over and over is, oh, it's got to be short, it's got to be viral, it's got to be like, you know, super to the point, or else people are too stupid to watch it all the way through. But it seems like, you know, you're not having that problem.
Well, I mean, that's also what goes hand in hand with me wanting to make a kind of like comedic edited version of it. Is I feel like as much as part of the product of what I'm selling is the points that I'm making about them, part of it is also the presentation. And so the editing that I put into it, you know, there's a point to making everything like really it's almost like I'm jump cutting with the audio, if that makes sense. Like I'm cutting out all the fat and all the pauses. I like to have music end on cues before punchlines, and almost kind of like a setting up expectations kind of subconscious sort of thing way. I don't know. I feel like there's an art in of itself of how to present something, and I feel like that helps make it more entertaining for people. Whereas like if I literally just listed off each point that I had to make about an Unfriended, and I just said it without bringing that kind of like editing and jokes to it, then I'm not sure I would have as many subscribers. I feel like part of what I'm offering is like a comedic, funny video in a way. I don't know. It's I do get a decent amount of comments of people who say that even though they disagree with me on something, they found the video entertaining, and that's why they keep wanting to watch. So yeah, I mean, at least there's that.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's most definitely an element of comedy to your videos, especially in that Unfriended video. You know, where essentially you have very effectively worked in all these memes about the film, where, you know, they're going to be reacting to this thing that's going on Skype when all of a sudden it's Always Sunny in Philadelphia clip or whatever, or, you know, some video clip from somewhere else. You know, or in the case of like your Cool Cat review, where you don't really need to throw in a meme or remix all that often because the film just kind of makes fun of itself.
Yeah. It really just depends on the movie of what I'm able to add to it.
Yeah.
Unfriended was just so exploitable because of the format. I'm like, well, I can sneak in something here and here and here and here. That review wound up taking me so much longer to edit anything else because there were just way too many points where I couldn't tell myself that I didn't want to add it in. If I think of something and I'm just like, oh, this would be funny, I'm never going to say like, oh, no, I shouldn't spend a few more days editing on it. I'm going to go, yeah, this is going to be funny.
Yeah. I mean, there's just kind of a bit of a snarky comedic, let's make fun of this movie because it's so stupid kind of tone to it that I think was missing for a little while after like Mystery Science Theater 3000 disappeared off the TV, and then you can only get it on DVD. And now it seems like there are a bunch of YouTube channels, including yourself and like I Hate Everything or like Cinema Sins, for example, that have kind of brought that back in a way where you guys with a very fine tooth comb go through a movie and just like pick out the worst elements of it, and not only in a comedic way because comedy is certainly an element of it, but I feel like with your reviews specifically. Another thing that kind of makes them entertaining and gives them a bit of a unique flavor and bite to them is just kind of the harshness that you come through with in your reviews.
Yeah, a lot of people are convinced that I literally don't like anything.
Yeah, and is that something that you feel like you genuinely feel as you're reacting to the movie, or do you feel like you kind of put yourself into like the heel role when you're about to review this movie, like I'm going to be the bad guy or something? I
don't fabricate my opinions.
Yeah,
there are things. There's a reason why when I created my film review channel, it's called Your Movie Sucks. Yeah. Is because I was going to I already knew before I started that I was going to be focusing on a lot of negative. And I mean, since creating my channel, I've actually moved on to a lot of reviews of films that I have very positive things to say about it. So like Synecdoche, New York is one of my longest series, and it's literally just me trying to dissect the film, but not saying really anything bad about it, just like praising and trying to interpret it. Yeah. Or my top 10 of the year videos. But anyway.
And you do your best of lists, as well. Exactly. So you do tell people things that you do enjoy.
Exactly. So I always knew, just based on, being aware of films and people's public perceptions to them. The first movie that I ever reviewed was for Precious, which was that Oscar bait movie that was just kind of like, it was so sloppy and poorly put together, and like not a lot of it made sense, but everybody was praising it, and it was almost like this big, like, oh, we have to say we like this movie just so we can give ourselves brownie points.
Yeah. Was that not based off that book Push, I believe? Yeah, okay. All right. Yeah. Which I remember reading in college and in like a lit course, and I remember being really moved by the book. But
did you watch the movie?
I did not see the movie, but I was about to ask you sort of what made the movie fall short for you.
Well, so it's my understanding that in the book there are several different stories involving different characters, right?
Sure, yeah.
In the film, they decided to have literally every single one of those things from those characters happen to the exact same character. It was the Precious character, this like unreasonable, unrealistic sequence of events that it was just like, you couldn't believe that all of this happened to one person. There were a lot of really simple editing mistakes that could have been avoided. And again, it's not the worst movie ever. It was just like, did not deserve the praise that it got. It was very, very sloppy in its presentation. But anyway, knowing that much, that what I knew I was going to say about movies in general was probably going to go against the grain. That's why I created my channel name the way that I did. And when I was first starting out, the way that I got a bit of attention was I actually titled my videos differently. So I wouldn't say YMS Precious. I said Precious Sucks in big capital letters. I wrote sucks. And it was just like, again, not fabricating my opinions. If I was, then I probably wouldn't have a decent amount of people following me. They would probably just think I'm a troll. Which I guess some people do, but it was just a way of like being self-aware enough about the contrast in my own opinions to everybody else's that I'm like, well, I'm just going to capitalize off of it. I'm going to say, okay, I know that not many people would agree with me on this, but I'm going to get attention from people who would probably be angry at my opinion. And then hopefully after the video's over, I've made a few decent points and they've gotten less angry and now are subscribed to my channel. And
hopefully, you hope.
I mean, it worked out for the most part.
I mean, I feel like personally, harshness is kind of a necessary evil, because if you just like everything, I feel like nobody takes you seriously. You know, I mean, if everything's great, if everything's amazing, there's not really any investment there, I think, for the viewer. You know, I think once you've kind of gone against what the viewer thinks, or you've gone against the opinion that the viewer has before they've probably clicked on the video, you've kind of challenged them, and you've made them either, you know, potentially agree with you by the end of the video, or maybe have made them think harder about why it is they like the movie.
It's also a little bit about like standards and what you're willing to put up with too. And I'm not saying that like people that like more things than I do are wrong, but there's always a certain threshold. And it's not really consistent with everybody, but there's plenty of people that can watch my videos, and if I'm giving all these different ratings out of 10, they can watch my video and leave a comment and be like, well, Adam rated it a 6 out of 10, which means that I'll probably love it and think that it's an 8 out of 10. And some people legitimately just watch through my content and just do their own math to like what they think their own rating would be from my rating.
I get so many comments. I get so many tweets. People are like, dude, he gave it a 6 out of 10. That means it's got to be amazing. That means that means I'll love it.
That's funny. No, yeah. And then if you're not like just constantly praising everything too, if you say like, okay, there are very, very few movies or albums or whatever in a year that I'm able to classify as perfect 10 out of 10, then when you do it, then they're like, holy shit. Right. Sure, and it actually means something. And so when you give that rating to something that actually, truly, legitimately deserves it, then you're doing a great service to the movie itself and everybody who would want to see it. If they're like, holy shit, well, now I have to check it out, because now they know that you're actually being serious and you're not just bullshitting.
Totally. You can't just like hand out 10s like candy.
Exactly.
So, you know, sort of what makes a 10 out of 10 for you? You know, I know that when I label something a 10 out of 10, it's just purely based off of personal preference. And I guess what I think in my head is that this album, this piece of art, has kind of reached what I feel to be this peak threshold of enjoyability. You know, like I can't see myself enjoying this anymore. I can't see myself enjoying music any more than I'm enjoying what I'm listening to right now.
Well, so to me, there has to be, it's definitely a combination of my own personal enjoyment and as much of an objective classification that I can give it while still being trapped inside a human brain. So a movie would default at like a 5 if we watch the 10-hour long paint drying on a wall film. Technically flawless. It's just a single shot of paint drying on a wall for 10 hours. No mistakes, but it didn't really achieve anything because you just let the camera roll. That would be a 5.
I'd have to give that a 0 because I would hate it too much.
Oh yeah, but that's why I'm trying to bring in objectivity, because if the director, even if I personally hate it, you can loathe the experience. But what if the director said you were supposed to hate it? What if the director's entire intent was for you to hate the movie? Like there's a movie called Jean Dielman, I pronounced that horribly wrong. The entire title is Jean Dielman 23 Kaidu Commerce 1080 Bruxelles. It's a French movie directed by Chantal Ackerman, I think her name is. And she was a very obscure kind of like artistic director that a lot of her short films are taught in like film class and stuff. But anyway, it's literally a 3.5 hour long film of a woman cleaning her house, and every once in a while somebody comes over and it's implied that she's also hooking on the side, and it goes on for forever. And I don't really want to spoil the ending, but to me, that movie, it's a very clearly defined intent of trying to make the viewer feel trapped in the same world that she is, because the character herself, she's like she's widowed, her husband died, that information is revealed at the beginning, and like it's trying to bring a different context under something that could just be like, okay, if you were watching a woman peeling potatoes and making this dish in any other movie, you wouldn't think anything of it. But because we're watching this over this extended period of time and you truly feel like you want to die watching it, then you're able to get into her mindset. Now, I don't enjoy that movie, but I'm not going to say it's a bad movie, because like the director's intent should play some sort of a factor in it. If the entire intent of the movie was to make you feel like shit, then I don't feel like I could say that they did a bad job. So to me, the director's intent does play a lot of it. I would never include that kind of movie on my like top 10 of the year. I might include it as like a guilty pleasure. Like I don't really want to be putting these really almost borderline pretentious art films on too high of a pedestal like some people do. Because there are literally just people that only watch those kind of movies and look down on other people. I think that's kind of stupid. But to me, my favorite directors and my favorite films are not just something that could be considered flawless and perfect. But there's kind of like a scale of what did they achieve. So if you're going to judge a movie and say that flawlessness is an absence of mistakes, so a mistake being something that the director did not intend. Watching paint dry on a wall, you could easily achieve a flawless film by just leaving your camera rolling and paint's drying on a wall. No effort was made, no achievement was made, no mistakes were made, but no achievements. Now, if you're going to look at, like that sequence in Children of Men, that like 20-minute long single shot shootout, that's a gigantic achievement. Like to have all the actors coordinated in such a way, all of the special effects and everything coordinated without any cuts taking place for however many minutes, this extremely coordinated, timed spectacle where if somebody screws up, you have to literally do the whole shot over again. That's an achievement on a technical level. Mm-hmm. Another thing that I would call an achievement is if you're able to not just invoke an emotion, because that's very subjective. Somebody can cry about something I thought was stupid. Somebody can find something funny that I thought was not funny, right? But if somebody's able to have a deeper meaning to a film, to be able to create something where I watch it once and I got something out of it, it was a good movie from whatever possible reasons I could give, but then the second time you watch it, you realize there's more to it. It doesn't have to be like hidden secret plots, but there could be things where it's like, oh, now that I have the full context of everything in the movie, I can see how this makes sense. I can see how this makes sense. It doesn't have to not make sense beforehand, but you could learn more about it. You could be like, oh, so this fits in thematically. Every extra effort that gets put into a movie sort of brings it higher up the scale for me. So my all-time favorite movies are generally along the lines of having some sort of combination of perfection and flawlessness with like nothing that the director didn't intend. And then beyond that, like perfect acting, perfect cinematography, and not just that, but like purposeful cinematography, like trying to think of an example of like really purposeful cinematography. There's like the film Mommy, directed by Xavier Dolan, and the entire movie is like shot in a 1:1 aspect ratio, and it's very clearly just trying to make you feel like trapped in this like almost claustrophobic emotional environment that the characters are in, and things about it change during the movie depending on what type of parts of their life they're in, and the cinematography is used in a very clever way. There's a shot of like a microwave, and because it's a 1:1 aspect ratio, and because parts of the screen are cut off, the microwave doesn't say hello, it says hell. Very, very clever, cool things like that all just fit in thematically. I just rambled for so long, but there has to be some level of achievement for it to get anything higher than a 5. And if something is achieved so much and been relatively flawless, there are some movies that I'd give 10 out of 10 that have minor flaws in them. But the question is, do the achievements outweigh the flaws enough for it to be that high of a rating?
Sure. I agree that something doesn't necessarily need to be flawless in order for me to feel it's a 10 or feel it's an amazing record. Mm-hmm. Something doesn't necessarily need to, and I agree totally with what you're saying about achievement as well. Mm-hmm. However, I don't know if intent sort of ranks as high to me. Especially when it comes to negative reviews, and maybe this isn't something as much that I don't know. Maybe intent would be more important to me if I were doing movie reviews. I'm not totally sure,
but it partially is the medium too, because I don't rate music the same way.
Because there are certainly a lot of moments where the argument is sort of thrown at that, oh, well, this thing that you're critiquing here sounds a certain way because they wanted it to sound that way. And, in my own head, my just
that's
response
so debatable
is that,
with music, right?
Well, I mean, it just still sounds awful to me, like even if that was their intention, at that point, that sort of to me comes down to a matter of taste because, okay, they intentionally made this sound, but maybe they intentionally made that sound because they're not aware of what a better sound would be. Or, that was the vocal performance they intentionally delivered because maybe they're not really that great of a vocalist. So they're not capable of delivering a better vocal performance, intent can only really matter to a point. I guess it matters to me if we're talking about one of these art projects, much like these movies that you're talking about. Let's talk about an artist like Merzbow, for example, a noise artist whose music you don't enjoy by any stretch of the imagination in the way that you would enjoy a Beach Boys song. Yeah, well, even worse than that, we're talking about like harsh, ear-piercing, like white noise and feedback and, pretty much every unpleasant sound that you could imagine all happening at once in a seamless drone for a massive amount of time. And, it's not something that you're supposed to enjoy in the same way that you would a Beatles track. And, I could appreciate that type of stuff for the fact that he's intentionally trying to create something that is disturbing or stomach churning or just kind of stimulate your mind in a way different than a normal, verse, chorus, verse song would.
Well, I mean, Death Grips does that in a sense.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And we can get into that later as we get more into the music conversation. We could talk about a little bit of Death Grips, but they certainly do that too. So when they, for example, make music that's super visceral and that was their intent to make that music, I guess I can appreciate that and I like that, but also there are some artists that, I don't know, make music that to me might be a little funny and I don't think they intended it to be funny, but I'll still enjoy it anyway. And I'll still like maybe potentially give it a positive review, but it's purely from my standpoint, and usually when I do that, I will pretty explicitly, say like, listen, you may not like this, or you may think this is really goofy or dumb or stupid. And I totally appreciate that and understand that, but I keep listening to this because I think it's hilarious and I'm just getting, my own little weird slice of enjoyment out of it that the artist might not have intended for me to have, but I'm having it anyway, I
think that movies and music are kind of going for different things in that sense. I'm not sure I would rate them in the same way. So I kind of agree with you. I mean, like I don't really give numerical ratings to albums. Every once in a while I'll be like, oh, I'm enjoying this album, listen to it. But I don't really like, I don't have enough time in my day to be seeking out every single album.
Oh, it's fine. I don't give numerical ratings to movies. I'm just like, oh, that was good. Oh, that sucked.
But
oh, that was
like,
good.
I feel like where part of the intent conversation comes in with movies specifically is that there's a lot of the vast majority of films are trying to tell a story, right? The vast majority of songs are trying to tell a feeling, right? And so I feel like there's a bit more creative liberty or artistic license in what you can do in a song without having anyone really question whether or not it's intentional. When it comes to music, I don't think it's as relevant at all whether or not something's intentional. But with films, when you can look at something as simple as like, why didn't the character do this, or this didn't exist in this time period, or that was clearly not supposed to show up in the frame. It's a lot. It would be a lot more difficult to pick out specific goof type things in songs than it would be to do for a film. So I feel like the director's intent matters a lot to me, even though it obviously doesn't override my overall experience of it. It matters to me in a sense because if I'm critiquing the artwork itself, if I'm critiquing the artist and the form, really, to me, filmmaking is the craft of being able to have control over what's in your frame and control over what's in the final product, and even script writing, control over what happens at what time in the story and how it's delivered and what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. Like that's the entire craft to me, is like being able to perfect that. And most people who really suck at movies or suck at directing or suck at writing, those things tend to be a lot more noticeable and seep through than the people who are truly talented and perfectionist at it.
Next question. I know that you have this massive passion for films, a passion that isn't going to be wiped away by just watching a bunch of shitty movies that you hate.
Yeah.
However, I imagine that you probably would get sick of movies if watching movies that you hate were the only movies you were watching.
Mm-hmm.
How exactly do you work movies that you actually enjoy into your day, your week, your month, and I'm sure you're trying to constantly expose yourself to new movies as well that you enjoy. Where do you most consistently find yourself finding new films that you really like?
Well, so when it comes to me and I guess my overall schedule and what I do with my time, even when it comes down to like gaming for my gaming channel, because I'm now doing all of these, I'm involving all of the things that I love in what is now my job. Now it's like I'm prioritizing what I do with my time that I would be watching movies or playing games based on what is going to wind up showing up in a YouTube video, right?
Sure.
And so my yearly best of the year lists, they have really helped me to kind of double down and commit to spending more of my time watching and discovering new things that I haven't seen before, or movies that I know are supposed to be decent, that have good reviews from Cannes and all that. So that's helped a lot, but I've kind of fallen into this trap where I'm spending so much time working on everything that's current, not just with my yearly list, but with other movies coming out, that I really need to check out some older films that most people would consider to be like absolutely essential, but I have not given myself the time to do that yet because I spend so much time on everything else. I guess when it comes to watching enjoyable movies, there's always the opportunities of wanting to get some friends together and show them a movie. Usually if there's any kind of I guess gathering or date or something, if let's say it's like close to Halloween, I'll probably have like a horror movie night at my place and invite some friends over. Usually pretty much everything I do just revolves around anything that's related to like my YouTube presence, but yeah, I don't really know where I was going with this. I kind of just rambled.
Well, that's that's fine. I'm trying to, tease like more information out of you about this. You just mentioned Cannes.
Yeah.
Is the film festival scene and circuit important to you? Is that relevant to you? Is the indie film circuit important to you? If you didn't follow these things closely, do you feel like, your average blockbusters, kids movies, huge hyped big movie studio films that are constantly being pumped out, if that's all you really had to review and talk about, do you just feel like you would hate movies?
Well, there's also the argument that I might just like them more if I didn't know there was something better. But
well, yeah, absolutely. So is it about balance there?
Yeah, in a way. So, I mean, coming up to I guess the September and October months is when there are two major Canadian film festivals going on that I frequent. One of them being in the city that I live in, Vancouver. So, of course, I'm going to go to that one. The other one being Toronto Film Festival, which I went last year. I had a fucking blast. I had the time of my life there, and now I feel like I should probably go again this year. But yeah, it's very, very important to me because so many of the films that I love wind up premiering at those kind of places. Well, actually, most of them not most of them, but a decent amount of them wind up premiering at Cannes, and then what gets popular from Cannes winds up getting a bit of buzz for those film festivals. But I still get to see the movies, like, in some cases, a year before they're actually released, which sounds ridiculous, but otherwise I'd just be waiting. And it's good to, especially for my channel, it's good to be able to check these movies out ahead of time, as long as you kind of know which movies you're really looking for or looking to discover, I guess. It's good to check them out ahead of time so I can get a video out, because a lot of my subscribers are, I guess, like European or overseas, or have some kind of, I guess, preference for movies that a lot of other channels don't talk about. There aren't too many. I can't think of another like film review YouTube channel that's popular that really likes going to film festivals. Honestly, I'm trying to.
Yeah, whenever I see a lot of these YouTube movie review channels, a lot of them just focus on whatever the big popular movies in the theaters happen to be.
I feel like that's part of why I have any watchers at all, is because like nobody else is talking about these movies, and it's really unfortunate because it's like I just feel like if they were to see them, they would love them, but you just have to know how to find them.
Yeah, I mean it's just a niche thing, I mean some of the bands that I review every week are super obscure and just maybe have like several thousand fans
King
or something.
Cruel and Coco Rosie.
Yes, exactly. And I think those are interesting artists, and their music is worth discussing, and some of them have some pretty healthy fan bases. I mean, I'm not gonna say King Cruel is like so obscure that he's not making
his EP was actually decently popular, I think.
He's semi popular, but your average person walking down the street doesn't know who the hell he is. So hopefully when I review some of his music, when I do happen to like it, I can get a few more people to check it out.
That's what I've always valued the most about this, is like being able to introduce people to things that they love. I feel like that in itself is a very important service, because most people just don't know how to find these things.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like that's an important part of the process. I mean, I'm happy to review the new Kanye record, the new Beyonce record, especially when I end up liking it, because as a reviewer, as a critic, you want to take part in the larger conversations that people are having in the world of art that you're kind of specializing in. You don't just want to be out of these conversations. You don't want to be out of the loop of these discussions. But I think it's also kind of important, if you do have a platform and you do have people following you, to try to do at least a little curation, which is why I think it's essential that if I like the new Gore Guts EP that's got to get reviewed. You know, I mean, if I didn't feel this way, I probably would have never reviewed Death Grips in the first place. You know,
yeah, exactly.
Because at the time that I thought that their debut mixtape was awesome, you know, they didn't have that much attention. But then I was just like, well, you know, this is like really cool. This is really special. You know, they're not, you know, this mainstream music act, but it's kind of got to, it's got to get discussed.
Mm-hmm. And now they've blown up.
Yeah. And I think that when you do stuff like that, not only do you help, you know, you could end up being a one of the forces behind the success of an artist, but also, you know, you help kind of foster this world where you're hearing more of the kind of art that you actually want to hear. But also with your audience, I think you kind of create a stronger bond because, you know, you've exposed them to something that they wouldn't have heard before, and they really value that thing, and it's really important to them. So now they're coming back.
Yeah, exactly. It's always nice to be able to introduce people to things that like literally nobody else is talking about. There's some things where like so many movies where I review them and they're great and they seem like everything that people would love, but it's just the unfortunate reality of like, if you don't have X amount $1 million of an advertising budget, then, you know, what are you going to do? It's like so many movies that I know, like if Fox Searchlight just actually spent money on trailers for these movies, that they would actually do so much better. Fox Searchlight is notorious for just for having contracts with independent films and then just not even advertising them, just putting them in like a couple theaters and then being like, well, it wasn't going to make money anyway. What is it? This is an indie movie. And then just not profiting off of them in the way that they should. It's only when their movie gets several Oscar nominations that all of a sudden they're like, oh yeah, maybe we should put this in a few more theaters. It's really frustrating.
There are some record labels that I could probably list out, but I won't. That pretty much are guilty of the very same thing.
Yeah.
You know, they sign all these bands that I don't know what they thought was going to happen. But like they would just get popular on their own or something. But then they don't, you know, help them do a music video. They don't really promote their record. They don't make them a priority. And I just kind of wonder why, you know,
what's you have a sellable product.
Yeah. It's like, well, what's the profitability in putting this thing out and just not trying to do everything you can to promote it? But
I think that a lot of people that make those kind of decisions aren't really knowledgeable about the art itself and are more interested in running a business.
One more question before I think we get into some of the music stuff about your gaming channel and sort of the games that you play, and just to get a quick opinion about this. You know, I've been playing video games since I was a kid. So, you know, I guess I probably have a certain bias toward my games being a particular type of way. And not that there aren't games out today that I enjoy, but a recent trend that I see in a lot of video games, you know, especially on platforms like PlayStation and Xbox One, is that it seems like there are just more and more video games coming out that they just seem more like playable movies than they are actually games, at least in what I would consider to be a game. And I know that you're familiar with them and you've probably played a few of them as well. You know, do you have a particular opinion about these types of video games? You know, do you feel like it kind of defeats the point of playing a video game, or is this kind of an exciting new way of expressing in the video game medium?
I don't know if I can give a really like straightforward answer on this. I might just ramble a bit more.
You can ramble. You're totally allowed.
So Naughty Dog has been pretty great at making kind of like really cinematic games, and yes, some of their criticisms is that I mean, a decent amount of their games are taken up by cutscenes. I don't really mind that because I mean, you could consider the cutscenes as like a reward for the gameplay, or you could consider like it's just two different art forms colliding into one. But I thought like something like The Last of Us, with especially the soundtrack by Gustavo Santo whatever. That was one of the best examples I could think of like a video game pushing more towards cinema and doing it pretty successfully. It's not perfect. There's like stupid AI and glitches, blah, blah, blah. But it did such a great job in that opening scene, especially of setting up the universe and, setting up the characters, showing some kind of consequence and threat. I just thought it was like one of the best openings to a video game ever. But then there's also people like David Cage of Quantic Dream, who you can kind of commend him for trying to take the medium to new places in a way, but you can tell that he kind of doesn't know what he's doing at the same time. So games that he's made being Indigo Prophecy, Heavy Rain, and what's that one with Ellen Page? Beyond Two Souls.
Yeah, Heavy Rain was super narrative. What's kind of funny is my wife seems to be super into those games, and not only if she gets a chance does she play them, but there are a lot of Let's Plays for these games online, and she just watches them as if she's watching a movie or something.
That's great.
and whoever's playing them, yeah, like I just said, it's just as if you're watching somebody else watch a movie or sort of play through this movie. But yeah, some of these games, as you were just saying, super narrative heavy, and I don't know, it just kind of seems to take away from, I don't know, the point of a game in a way. Although for some people, they would make that same argument of like RPGs, where you're essentially like taking turns fighting characters, rather than just kind of like buried deep into the action of the movement of the game.
The one thing that I might disagree with you on would be that you were kind of implying that it's now there's now more of like a focus on those, or that the industry is kind of shifting in that direction. And where I will say, like, so I mean, it's kind of gotten there's kind of been a market for it ever since, I guess, like Heavy Rain, or maybe even the console generation previous to that. It started out like there's a market for it for sure, and there are people that will buy these, and there's space in the industry for these things to exist. But I don't really think that we're shifting towards that as though it's like a logical progression of where games are going. I'm really excited for a type of like really narrative cinematic video game to exist in like virtual reality with the HTC Vive or something like that. That'll be really cool as kind of like an experimental way to view the medium. But with video games right now, we're at a really amazing point, I think. Like there's ways that the industry has gotten so much worse, and there's ways that the industry has gotten so much better. We're literally living in like both the best and worst generation for video games at the same time.
Really, and for every type of art form at the moment.
Well, so with video games in particular, like I personally think that this is like the absolute worst console generation. It's like less features for no reason, like, oh wow, your PS4 can't do as many things as the PS3 can do, et cetera, et cetera.
Loads of crappy, overpriced DLC from every new video game.
Really like unethical business practices, and like shipping your game before it's even finished, and just like, oh, we'll release a patch. I'm still pissed off at 343 for the Halo Master Chief Collection. I want the game I paid for, assholes. Anyway.
But yeah, I see what you're saying. These cinematic games, I don't see them as the be all end all. I don't see them as like something that's going to be taking over. I see them as more of just kind of a new interesting trend. They're not necessarily a threat to, there's always going to be sports games. People are always going to want their first-person shooters. Those are certainly not going anywhere. There are people who are chomping at the bit for whenever the next Grand Theft Auto is going to come out. People who like to play mobile games. Very much like the whole Steam engine has essentially turned online gaming and computer games into just the wild, wild west. So there's a lot of unpredictability. For something as narrative as these, more cinematic games, just like kind of come in and dominate and just sort of dictate the kind of games that everybody is making now.
I think the best part about this generation of video games, though, because I did say a lot about like the worst parts of it, but the best part about this generation right now is that anybody can make a game, and that's the perfect environment for new ideas and creativity. Is not having restrictions behind who can create what art. We have Toby Fox, who made Undertale, literally just pretty much just by himself. If you haven't played that, I would highly recommend it. I know people have probably overhyped it a bit, but it's one of the things that particularly stands out about it is the soundtrack. So I think that you would get some enjoyment out of it. We've got Jonathan Blow, who made The Witness, which is like one of the best games I've ever played in my entire life. Very different, and it's not a story game at all. It's like a puzzle game, but it's so like deep and thought provoking and very, very intelligently designed. And I literally just put like so many hours into it, at least 50 hours into that game. It's insane. But yeah, I appreciate that we're living in a point where people who have ideas no longer are behind this wall of people that they're not trapped behind publishers anymore. Now you can just basically release your game to the internet. You can release your music to the internet, and in some ways release your movie or your video entertainment to the internet. And people are able to decide for themselves what they like. And art has gotten better because of it, I think. I think we've gotten a much healthier variety of art forms, and smaller things that 10, 20, 30 years ago would have no chance of even existing in a mainstream market are now able to compete and able to be called the best game of the year. We have something like Minecraft, which is like the best-selling game of all time.
Yes.
Like that wouldn't give, 10 years before it got released, it wouldn't be able to really exist. You would have to have a sort of publisher doing that for you.
No, that game could have only existed now, for sure.
Exactly. I think that we're in a great point for creativity and just overall variety in our art forms. I'm looking forward to what the future holds. And now, especially with all these new generations being raised with the internet, seeing what people come up with as everybody gets older too.
All right. As far as the whole music thing, we know you're into Death Grips a little bit.
Yeah.
Not only do you just enjoy their music, but you've managed to beautifully work them into your own videos. So appreciate that as a Death Grips fan for sure. But what other music do you enjoy, and what kind of what genre would you sort of place your own music into? The music not only that you created in the past, but the music that you're sort of in the midst of composing right now that you're going to be releasing down the road.
So I don't feel like I restrict myself to one particular genre. So in my videos, I use like a decent amount of like either hip hop or classical, or like almost like 60s infomercial or TV dinner kind of vibe music. And I'll enjoy that stuff. I enjoy all of that stuff. But the band that has been my favorite band for a long time now is Bright Eyes. And they've got such a versatility of what point in their career you could pick an album from and it sounds completely different. Like even their I'm Wide Awake It's Morning and Digital Ash and a Digital Urn got released like a week apart from each other or something, and they sound completely different. Literally, one's just entirely folk, and one's it's all in the same vein, I guess. But
no, it's true. It's very much in that Conor Oberst vibe. I have to say though, I hated Digital Ash. I could not get into it.
Oh no, worries.
To me, it was like, I appreciate Connor for trying to keep up with the times on that record, and not to say that the indie folk thing was irrelevant at that time. It definitely wasn't. But it was like just before that record had come out, and he wasn't the only one who attempted this. The Postal Service had dropped. And then that sort of created this ripple within the indie scene, which was usually, electric guitars, acoustic guitars. But this was like, synth pop that like, the emo and the indie kids could listen to because it's like cute little quirky, sad little songs. And then that sort of, turned everybody else to like consider, hey, maybe I should try making some electronic music, And, there were so many records, and that was one of them, probably one of the better ones. But that was one of them that everybody was like going this electronic route because everybody was sort of jumping ship in a way just to kind of change up their sound and sort of,
it's like experimentation.
Yeah, absolutely. And you definitely know that all these people were like listening to each other so closely because many of them shared in a similar audience, Did
you feel the same way about the People's Key?
The People's Key liked a little bit more,
Yeah, I felt like it was a more like mature and refined way of doing the same thing. It's very similar in sound, I guess, but I feel like they did it better. I feel like it was produced better and it was less experimentation and more just going back to it, but doing it better in a way.
But also, speaking of going back, what did you think of Connor going back to Desaparecidos with that newest record of his?
I still haven't even checked that out.
Oh,
it's
really?
been on my to listen to list for quite a while. I still haven't even checked it out.
I mean, some of his lyrics are pretty biting on the record. I definitely give it to him. He has some pretty politically charged and very very thoughtful lyrics on the record. I mean, I think the instrumentals though are kind of one dimensional. Like if you're not going to find the instrumental diversity on that record that you would on a Bright Eyes record for sure.
Part of the reason why Bright Eyes is my favorite artist is because of the lyricism. Music has always more or less been sort of therapeutic for me, and that's also why I write it. Is a lot of the pretty much every single song on this album that I'm working on is literally just me confronting a different problem or issue that I've had in my life, and I'm literally so I did say earlier how I haven't been promoting my music as much because everything that I've recorded has been so old that it doesn't really reflect what I would put out today, or it doesn't really reflect the production quality that I could put into it today. What I'm actually doing with this new album is I'm taking songs that I've written from the past 10 years. So the album starts out with a song that I literally wrote like 10 years ago, and it'll end with a song that I've written this year. And it'll kind of have like this logical, almost kind of a progression of not just like the story of my life, but how I've changed and how I deliver things differently, or how my music has changed, or how my writing has changed, and lyricism, et cetera, et cetera. And I feel like with music playing such a close kind of emotional part of my life, I feel like Bright Eyes is just the closest that I've been able to come to towards a sort of like therapeutic understanding in a way. Like there's so many things that he talks about in his albums that I feel like to almost even understand what he's talking about, you almost kind of have to experience these things for yourself. He's been very thoughtful, and I guess my lyrics don't progress to be like as cryptic as he winds up becoming in his later albums. Like now he's all about spiritualism and stuff. But I mean, I feel like he's the closest to me. And then in terms of actual musical sound, I would say that there's like a bit of Regina Spektor in my album, maybe a little, depending on which album of hers. I don't know. It's tough to pinpoint. I think we're kind of gonna get to like what music I would define myself as, but even though it does sound a bit like Bright Eyes, it's not the same at all in the same way, No,
I mean, you're just kind of throwing your influences out there, know, and everybody's got to start somewhere, It's not like the people who are influencing you aren't without their influences as well.
Yeah, exactly. It's like alternative piano-based rock, and I try to the piano is what I use as the main instrument for most of my songs. And whereas a lot of bands might have piano as kind of like a backing instrument that's not really doing that much, in my songs, I'm like, I guess, just seriously rocking out on it, or trying to do something that's like complex or like fast paced. But yeah. I mean,
it's not like that type of thing hasn't happened before, Exactly. It's not like that idea is so alien to anybody
almost
listening.
Like Midway State.
Yeah.
I guess, in terms of tone, but I feel like it's different at the same time.
Yeah. No, I'm trying to think of other artists, for example. Like Man had the piano pretty prominently in their music. Dresden Dolls, for example, who I know toured with Regina Spektor
Nice.
For a while. I'm trying to think of who else, like Mates of State. Wolf Parade as well. Spencer Krug in general, who's like a pretty notable indie musician who the piano is really kind of his axe.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm just throwing stuff out there. Tom Waits, although he's not really a rock musician.
Yeah.
But very, very well known for his piano playing. But whatever. So moving away from that, but outside of kind of this piano rock world, singer-songwriter world, you're talking about some of this other stuff that you listen to. I'm trying to remember the composer's name. If I'm correct, I've heard, like a few Laurie Johnson compositions in your videos, like you were saying, sort of that 60s like commercial music.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, like that kind of cutesy
I definitely
shit.
Spent a lot of time trying to find all of those.
Yeah,
There's albums I called like music for TV dinners, where a lot of them are from anyway. But yeah, what were you saying?
Well, I was just going to ask you, I remember I used to be big into that stuff too, just because I found like those old musical, like commercial music relics so funny and so entertaining.
They've got a very useful tone for what I'm doing, and I feel like I've used more and more of that tone in my reviews more recently, just because it's so it fits it very well.
They complement whatever message you're trying to deliver as well. It's like as soon as that music pops up, it's very upbeat, and it just makes you want to listen into whatever's happening.
So I mentioned a couple artists that I'm into. I didn't really go full extent. My music taste is kind of here and there. It's kind of all over the place. So obviously Death Grips, although I haven't given their really new album a serious listen yet. I've only a few tracks.
Do that.
Yeah, exactly. I've almost just been like putting it on so much of a pedestal that it's like, I can't do it now, and just put it off another day. Anyway, so there's that. There's I really like Daft Punk's new album, or newish now. It's not really new anymore, but
yeah, I like that one a lot too.
I like Coco Rosie. I think that Tales of a Grass Widow is probably their best album.
It's a really odd, I mean, Coco Rosie is a unique artist.
Oh yeah.
I mean, the vocals have always been slightly off-putting for me.
Oh yeah.
But I appreciate, what they're trying to do. It's one of those things where it's like, I see your intent, but I can't, I know
exactly what you mean. And that's why I only really, really like the Tales of a Grass Widow album. I didn't think that their Heartaches, whatever, was it Heartache City? I don't know. I didn't think that their new album was amazing, but I really liked Tales of a Grass Widow anyway. I thought
Are you into Joanna Newsom at all?
Oh, yeah. Actually, you know what? What's really funny is as soon as you said that you couldn't get past the vocals, I feel like that's been said to a lot of the music that I listen to. I feel like more or less like 90% of the artists that I really, really love have a very, very unique sounding voice or a very unique sounding tone. I always kind of go for like, what can I not get anywhere else in my art forms, I guess?
Absolutely.
The things that
I do too. I'm really thinking of the same thing.
I absolutely love and want to seek out. Because it's like, if I'm just seeing a copy of something else I've already seen, then why do I want to see it? Why would I want to pay $12 whatever to see a movie that I could just imagine at home instead if I'm already like 20 minutes ahead of it? If I've already seen it before, what's the point? Right.
Fully agree. It's just that when I seek out those weird sounds and those weird artists, it's just that I go into expecting that, okay, I know this is going to be odd. I know this is going to be kind of one of a kind, but that might also, the idiosyncrasies of the artists that I'm seeking out might turn me off too, I guess idiosyncratic is kind of the word to look for there. You know, the things that make an artist or a piece of art unique could also be the things that are not selling points to you about it, you know? And I guess, you know, as a critic, you try to do your best to, even if some of that stuff is slightly a turnoff, you know, you try to appreciate it. I guess that is an instance of me valuing intent. You know, even if something is a little bit of a turnoff to me, if I think it's done well, you know, I can definitely, you know, give it a compliment, give it a nod for sure.
Just say, like, even if it's not for me, I can still appreciate what it's doing, or I can understand what this might be to somebody else.
Sure,
what do you think of Joanna Newsom, by the way?
I like her music quite a bit. I think Have One on Me, while I was really impressed with it when it came out. In the long run, I think it's kind of just the length of the album has kind of worn on me a little bit, but I thought her last record was really good. Yeast, of course, is really great.
That's my favorite. Only Skin is like one of my favorite songs.
Yeah. And, you know, her debut record is just kooky and out there. And, you know, I definitely appreciate that about her earlier stuff. But yeah, I enjoy her music.
What do you think of Dan Lesec versus Scroobius Pip?
That record. I remember
more than one record.
I'm trying to remember which one it was. The one with kind of the two clay faces on the front.
Angles,
kind of yeah. I remember I tried that record out because Pitchfork had given it such a scathing review at the release of the record when I was like still following their reviews on a regular basis. And I thought it was kind of fun. I mean, I didn't love it, but that record definitely put me on to Scroobius Pip and had me checking out everything that he had done after that.
Okay, sweet.
And yeah, he's a pretty quirky rapper.
Yeah, again, just another like unique voice.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it seems like right now the UK is definitely getting more attention for its hip hop than it has over like the past 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
You know, right now seems like to be a pretty pivotal point for UK hip hop, especially with an artist like Skepta, who's been around for so long. Getting as much attention as he has off of his new record. It seems like Americans through the internet are slowly starting to like really finally gain a taste for grime. And you know, like they know a good grime record when they hear it now. I mean, not only do they know like a decent grime record when they hear it, but you know, they actually kind of want to hear some of the stuff.
I feel like we're getting to a point where Americans are slowly realizing that there are other countries that make art. I feel like America has had a bit of a problem when it comes to trying to seek out art, whether it's film or music, that's from outside of their own country. And I guess I don't know. I'm Canadian, so maybe it sounds a little racist when I say it, but I feel like just what Americans are exposed to in advertising is always going to be just within their country. Whereas American art and media, it's projected all across the world. Like everybody's always paying attention to America. Even with American politics, like this whole Trump thing is like a reality TV show. It's kind of fascinating.
Yeah, you definitely have a point when it comes to art, you know. And even me myself, you know, when I'm reviewing stuff, I'm most often, you know, reviewing stuff that's from my own country. I mean, not only just because it's more often what I'm being exposed to and more often what my audience is asking me to review, but it's also, you know, most likely the types of norms, musical norms, artistic norms that I'm used to hearing. Also my native language as well. You know, it's kind of tough to review a lot of this stuff in a foreign language. Since,
I love Stupid Flip, but I don't know what they're saying.
Yeah. You know, I mean, occasionally here and there are some records in another language that, you know, I'm head over heels for. But sometimes when, you know, language plays a pretty pivotal role as to what makes the music lyrics, so appealing.
Especially there's no subtitles for an album.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas, with films, it's a lot easier, I feel, to get into foreign language.
But like you were saying, you know, I feel like we're just kind of finally now getting over that whole accent thing a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
But you know, maybe it might be the language barrier one day. You know, I feel like another thing that kind of makes finding foreign music difficult, especially for somebody who's into alternative music, is when I go to try to find out about like Chinese music that I might be interested in or Russian music that I might be interested in, the artists that I'm hit with instantaneously first are, you know, the big popular pop artists from those countries, you know, and not necessarily the obscure artists who might be doing something that I think is kind of unique or one of a kind or whatever. You know, but the Canadian indie scene has seen a pretty healthy growth over the past, you know, like 20 years or so. You know, a lot of Canadian indie artists have been getting a lot of nods in the music industry, but it's only been until recently that, you know, the biggest rapper on the face of the fucking planet has been Canadian. Yeah, you know, Drake has. Yeah. Oh yeah, I mean, Drake has definitely broken down a lot of barriers in that regard.
Well, with Canadians, it's pretty easy to just like. There's no moment where an American audience is going to be like, oh, they're Canadian and be turned off by it. Usually they're just going to assume they're American and then be like, oh, I didn't even know they were Canadian. Whereas with like somebody who has a thicker accent or like somebody from the UK, there might already be that first impression that's already apparent in their music or apparent in their artwork that might. I don't know. That might either turn some people off or just might not want to make people advertise them as much at the same time, I guess.
No, absolutely. You know, but I mean, still, you do have to admit that, I mean, as far as rap music, I mean, up until the internet age, very geographical, you know, in terms of like the support and the relevance of an artist within a certain place, you know, so in a Canadian artist trying to market themselves in America wouldn't necessarily be easy because that artist wouldn't necessarily have a home base in the States for there to be local promotion to really just kind of support them and push them to the local community.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, but now in the internet age when, you know, not only can you be from anywhere and get an audience from anywhere else if people happen to like your music, you know, but you also have artists who are from New York and they're making records that sound like records that would come out of Atlanta or out of Houston, which, you know, more than a decade ago was something that was unheard of. You know, it's like if you were from New York, you sounded like you were from New York, you know? And then on top of it, you have artists like Lil B or artists like Death Grips who are effectively making hip hop music, but they don't really sound like they're from anywhere, you know?
They sound like they're from another planet.
Yeah. I think we're going to leave it at that. I want to thank my guest, Adam of YourMovieSucks.org.
Thank you so much for having me on. That was great.
Yeah, no, it was great. Thanks for coming on and talking about your reviews, about criticism, about music, about video games, about everything. We did do it, man. We did it really fucking hard. This is a long, passionate podcast, and you've been a great guest. So, you know, I'm sure our paths are going to cross again in the future, dude.
Yeah, for sure.
All right,
catch you later.
Again.
Thanks for having me on.